We'd like to say a special good morning to former Assistant Commissioner of Police. She's now retired, and Mr. Bishop, clearly she does not look retired, okay?
No.
Margaret Sampson-Brown, and she is currently the manager of the Victim and Witness Support Unit of the TNT Police Service. So that means she's still serving us. And just for reference, we add that in 2012, she was named Woman of the Year by the Advocate for Safe Parenthood, Improving Reproductive Equity, Aspire. Mrs. Sampson-Brown spent 41 years in the police service, and she's now here to give us her insight into the challenges faced by women in the protective services. And we're going to put it in the context, Mrs. Sampson-Brown. This discussion between Mr. Bishop and I came first out of the incident with the chief fire officer. Okay, we're not sensationalizing anything, and we're not going to pinpoint on his situation. But it was really a situation between the chief fire officer and his subordinate. And then we do know from experience, situations like those make up some of the challenges that women across the board, police, army, coast guard, anywhere in the protective services across the world would face. But we're asking you here to give us your insight from a Trinidad and Tobago perspective.
Thank you so very much, and it's good to be here. It's good for you to have me here.
I saw you rear back just for a minute when Sharmain mentioned, what was the genesis of this particular aspect of our program. And it's because many argue that there was a relationship going on there. There was a relationship going on here. Well, there was nothing. There was no aggrieved party. And I proffered, and I could be wrong in this, is that there's a thing called economic coercion that is not, because it can happen. If you know that you're in a place, you're trying to get a job, your circumstances are that you want to move forward in life, and the avenue is paved with an implied statement that this is how you do it. There is coercion there. And while I'm not making a judgment one way or the other, I am surely saying these are factors we have to look into. And when a woman finds herself in a situation like that, see what the avenue says, knows within herself this is not the way it should be. But do I have a choice? Are there institutions, are there avenues for them to go? That's what we're talking about.
They have a choice, and I continue to say that because in my 41 years of service, it has not been a very clear scene. There has been approaches. There has been approaches at levels, but it's up to the individual who has to say no and mean no, because why do you come into an institution? You apply to be a police officer or a fire officer or a prison officer, and you come in. There are particular requirements for you to come in. You have to apply, you have to take an examination, and there's a particular, nowhere on that protocol says that you have to be friendly or you have to submit yourself to a senior officer. Nowhere on it says that. So if it is that I'm not saying there are energies and electricities between male and female, because you live in a male dominion. And the fire is male, the prison is male, the police is male, and you will have relationships. But it must be a healthy one. It must be one that both parties could enjoy. Once there is one where the senior person exerts a particular kind of behavior on the junior, and make her believe that she must subject herself to his advances, then you're bordering on sexual harassment. And whether or not that there was a policy in place at the fire services, at the prisons, at the police, for a clear policy in place for sexual harassment and the consequences of sexual harassment, and whether or not once a female believes that she's sexually harassed, that there is a systematic approach to her gaining a kind of response to her report, a timely response, instead of having her transferred to another unit or another division, and the person stays within his realm and she's transferred. But it must be a clear, direct route upon which a sexual harassment report must take a form. There has been, in the police service, in the prisons, we have had persons reporting particular instances of I would say sexual harassment. Because what I am not going to comment much on the video. I'm not going to comment much on it. But clearly there was violence there. But I would say that's the end result of a violence. Violence would have started from since perhaps in the beginning. It's because that the physical aspect of it, like in domestic violence, persons go through domestic violence for years. And the minute the perpetrator starts to become physically violent, then suddenly, wow, I'm a victim of domestic violence.
I want to go back to something just for a moment, because when you mentioned that you have a choice and you can, once you see the signs, move to report it, what guarantee is there for someone who's passed the exam, they're inside the protective service already? What guarantee is it that they will not be victimized, they will not be marginalized, they will not be denied promotions and stuff like that? Is there a body set up to look after the well-being of these people beyond the report of sexual harassment?
Good questions, Rennie. Yes, I know for a fact that the police service has designed a sexual harassment policy. I cannot speak for the fire or the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment. I can't speak for them. There is a system. When we say victimization, how do you balance harvesting marshmallow and diamonds? How would I stay in a violent relationship with a senior officer because it brings me what? What it brings me, it's almost, I would say when I'm sharing with my female officers, you're actually doing 2 positions for 1 salary.
I've got 3 kids at home, and I am the one bringing the money home. And this job is important to me.
So it's important to me, so I will subject myself to advances that I am not comfortable with, that makes me less of a human, that is not part of my terms of reference. It is not part of my job spec. If I am a police officer, I am coming into work. Why should I subject myself to the advances of a senior officer?
And I agree with you that they should not. So that's the reason I ask you if there's procedure in place to protect the person, that once they say, I will not be a victim of this, I will not go along with this, go along to get along foolishness. What guarantee is there to protect them that they are not marginalized? That's very important to me, because on the one hand, it is good to say, and I'm not disputing what you say. I mean, I'm not going to be part of it. I'm not going to be part of it. I'm not going to live like this. I needed to be a physically equipped person, intellectually equipped, and ready to do this job. That's how I got you. That's nice. That's great. And we understand that. But once I say I am not going to follow the crowd, who is watching after me as to what happens to me after the report is over? So you discipline the person. God help you, because sometimes when you discipline people is when you really get the axe coming down on you from all the other. So my question remains singularly: what procedure is in place to watch after the complainant? One, after all of this is finished, and if you say that in fact the police did it, what's wrong with the other essential services not doing it? Is my inquiry.
No, again, I can't speak for the others, but I know the police service, we have a sexual harassment policy, but whether it's effective as I would want it to, I would not say no. I would say it's not as effective. I don't think the response for female officers who report sexual harassment is timely. I don't think what we do is that we transfer the female out of the position, and whether or not she gets, yes, there are services available, the social work department, they're available, but I think there needs to be a whole lot more done in respect of when women report sexual harassment. I'm not standing there as a protocol, but there should be a more aggressive kind of, because what happens to the male? The woman is transferred. She is dislocated. She has to go in another division or whatever. What is happening to the senior male?
I got a major problem with that, because it sounds like the Catholic Church in reverse.
Yes, the senior male, you see, because he remains to sexually harass another person, and it's almost as if it's batches after batches fall prey to a kind of behavior that should be stemmed. And I believe that, notwithstanding under the Sexual Harassment Act, if he touches he could come under the Sexual Offences Act if he touches part of the person and make advances and so on under the Sexual Offences Act. But how many reports ever reach that?
Well, here is the problem, and I know Sharmain has to come in here and because she'll just forgive me for a moment. That is my problem here. What went on? I'm not going into the merits or demerits of what took place with the fire senior official and the individual. What I do have a problem is now I hear there were other reports made. Yes. If there are other reports made, it means the system is not in place, or what is in place failed miserably.
Yes.
And that is what we're trying to get to this morning. What obtains right now, what recourse is there for females who are in fact victimized by the aggression or the...
Yes.
You know, it gets me kind of upset because it is hard to believe that we are in a situation now where we're talking about systems that are ambiguously operating. There's no ambiguity here. If there is something going on there, there must be. We can get 5, 6, 7 7-member group of people to say we are going to follow through on this charge, and we will stay watching the individual, look at their scores, look at their performance, look at what's being handed out to their colleagues, see where they are denied, and see if there is a pattern. If there is a pattern of retaliation, then we will retaliate against the retaliator.
I love that system, but it must be a system that is maintained by. Would males do that, Rennie? Would males stand up? And you see, sometimes we need as
I want a committee that looks at it.
Yes.
And you can comprise it of men and women.
Yes.
I really don't care.
Yes.
There are people of good conscience everywhere.
Yes, they are. But it must be one. I hear you, Rennie. I'm saying Rennie.
That's all right.
But I hear you. But again, when we look at the whole, the protective service is one as if it protects. You know, you have a duty. The police have to protect and serve, and the regiment have their, and the fire have their, and it's almost as if it stays secure in their own space. It's almost as if,
Just a side point. I know it's probably irrelevant here, but we pay their salaries. I'm sorry, Sharon.
We pay tax too, you know. Yes, Sharon.
You have you've used the word bordering on sexual harassment, and that is what I think is the most important here, because you are at the police service. You are beginning to define sexual harassment within the context of the police service. Yes. I don't know if it has been defined for the Army, for the Defense Force, Coast Guard, prison services, or the fire services. Yes. Right? There is redress, but there's not redress specifically on sexual harassment. In addition to which, sexual harassment, which is, I'm going back to your use of the word bordering on it, is what is rampant across the protective services. It's bordering on it. So there's always the inappropriate touching that can get a male in court, and all that we know. How many, from your experience, you would know, because you would be on the line. You all will talk among yourselves and stuff, and you've had 41 years in the service. How many? What's the percentage of what actually happens to what is actually reported, if there has been any reported at all?
There has been some reports, but I think the percentage of it occurring is much higher than those reporting. And it may be the perception that if I report it, I'm not getting sufficient redress, I'm not getting timely redress, I may be ostracized. Even by my own peers, you would hear female officers saying, if I talk about it, my own peers would ostracise me. They would say that perhaps I asked for it. And all these different innuendos that come up. I don't know what, I know that there has been some responses in respect of sexual harassment. Why I say sexual harassment bordering is because in the sexual harassment is more like a policy in an organization. It becomes an offense when there's an investigation in respect of the touching, and if the touching evolves into under the Sexual Offences Act. But it's actually a policy, and the consequences of sexual harassment, where it is that a senior officer makes advances towards a junior officer, with a promise that I would give you a promotion, I would let you not work shift, you can work more during the day, and all these soft promises that would cause the junior officer to respond in a particular way. Now, some officers will feel that, would say that because she may have respond in perhaps in 1 or 2 of his advances, but in the third one, she's saying this is not what I am here for. So you find now support for that individual may not be forthcoming by her own peers. So it's almost as if when a person reports that he or she, he too, is being sexually harassed, what is the support system around that individual? If that person feels comfortable to report it, notwithstanding there's a policy in place, but whether or not, it's almost like domestic violence. Do I feel comfortable to report it because the systems doesn't allow me to get the timely redress that I would want? And it's about time that we see a strong response and a cry out for women in the protective service because they are constantly harassed by senior officers, because a junior officer cannot sexually harass a junior thing. He could make the environment sexually uncomfortable. Like a constable cannot be sexually harass a female or a male because they're of the same rank. He can't promise her anything. It has to be someone of a higher rank. And it's happening throughout the length and breadth of the national security.
Okay, you've said that it's happening. We've just identified that, yes, it is rampant, and there are many more instances than report. You have spent 41 years in the police service, and you retired as an assistant commissioner of police. This is a striking example.
Yes.
Can you tell me, how was that road? Tell us, how was that road? What were the challenges that you faced along the way that you can speak with us about now?
Okay.
That a woman police officer would have faced outside of simply outside of the box of sexual harassment? Because you started in 1970, wasn't it?
Yes, 1970. I recall, let me tell you, I have sometimes, monkeys know what tree to climb, you know. I had one particular situation in a particular division where I worked. And this officer would every morning when I come in, you know, he would call me in his office and he would keep expressing how much he loves me and whatever. And I tell him, one of these days I told him, I said, what you telling your wife when you go home? Or when you leave your wife in the morning to come to work? Do you prepare to say all these things? Because it's not making me comfortable. From very early, I told him, what you're saying to me is not making me comfortable. And I am not going to accept that. But he still insisted. So here what I did, I created my own defense. I told my officers who were working with me. So on mornings when he come in and he would say, Ms. Sampson-Brown, would I see you in your office? My officers would come near to the door and play, you know, they were very busy doing something around the door. It's almost as if they were they were protecting me. But I know I could have protected myself because I know if he'd raised his hand to do anything, I would have dealt with him very effectively. I would have, and I, you know, sometimes I share this with with some of my women, that we have to come up, even if you don't want to report it because you'll be ostracized. Come up with some innovative ways. Do some nice stickers and stick it around his office. One of the women shares, she said when she was being attacked by the officer, she said, I'm a drama queen, you know, and if you only touch me, I would make one drama here and I'm going to call your wife. You know, some of those innovative ways that would help us, but we should not be, and I'm saying we should not be coming up with innovative ways.
Exactly.
It must be, if a senior officer decides or attempts or even think, the consequences of his action should be so strong in his mind that he would not think twice. Because he has a wife, he has children, he has family, he has sisters, and I am sure that he would not want that kind of behavior exercised on his family or his wife if his wife is working in a male-dominated environment.
We have failed miserably if we have to get to the point where women have to be innovative to do to put up stickers and so on. But which comes to the point I made. A 9-member commission, for instance, comprising of different people, where female in the protective service can anonymously make a complaint. Yeah. Now, that to me is going to generate a lot of reports that they can look at. Then they can look at a pattern of behavior and they can deal with it. So it does not matter how your peers treat you, because your peers don't even know that you complained. Yeah. This body knows that you complained, and they are looking at the history of this individual, and they can form, and because that is the case, we also serve what you raised, where people know you're being watched all the time. You don't know what reports are made against you. You're being watched all the time, and that is what I believe will begin to change the environment that people work into, and the attitudes that they feel they can do with impunity. Because I get the feeling that is what obtains right now. I mean, there is no way, and I would have fired, I'm trying to stay safe on this, but I would have fired an individual just for the stupidity of having your private parts exposed with cameras. Yeah. I mean, it's just a case of judgment. You're just stupid. But further than that, to think that you can do it is where I have an issue. I have a very frightening issue that bothers me when I look at what happens in the Maraval police station, because there must be some kind of atmosphere there that tells you can get away, you can do things and get away. And speaking in terms of the one child abused over a period of 2 years by an officer from that place, and then another lady stopped for marijuana and she was assaulted in the back seat. There is something to deal with. Accountability. Yes. You're not going to be held accountable. And I believe if we have a 9-member commission, or whatever number you want to put, where females can anonymously report the aggressions of the transgressors, I think we're on the way to something.
That may be one approach, but I love the overt kind of reporting. The anonymity will give the female, yes, a kind of sense of security.
But people can have other agendas.
Yes.
The reason I mention is people can have agendas. You may be out for somebody and you decide, I'm just going to put a complaint against you. The problem is it's almost like a headline. Bishop did so and so, and no matter how many retractions you do later on, you can never remove Bishop did so and so. And for that reason, I would want it to be, done privately in fairness to both sides. Yeah. But I would expect aggressive monitoring and action by this 9-member commission.
Because investigation would reveal the truth. Investigation would reveal the truth. I support that whole, but there was an organization formed years ago, WISAP, Women in Service and Protection, and it was an organization formed by retired Senior Superintendent Junior Kendall, and she tried to incorporate all women in service and protection. And one of the core value of that organization was to really look at some of these issues, and women came from all the different women who's in this service, all the private, public NGOs. They would. We had a couple of meetings, but that organization just kind of phased when she retired. But it's something like that would kind of give women. We have to develop that sisterhood kind of situation where we felt even if the male, there's a consequential value to the men if they thought about, even they think about sexual harassment, but it must also be a supportive value that if I am sexually abused or sexually harassed, that I have my peers to support. And I think peer support is one of the critical things for women because some of us don't really get the kind of support from the peers, both male and female.
Thank you, Mrs. Margaret Sampson-Brown, retired Assistant Commissioner of Police, now Manager of the Victim and Witness Support Unit of the TT Police Service, as we've just touched the tip of the iceberg on the issues affecting women in the protective services across Trinidad and Tobago.
I do have one quick question to ask of you. We know what obtains, we know what we would like to see. Women who are in the service right now, and they find themselves at the wrong end of this harassment. What is the best advice you can give them as to how to deal with this right now with prevailing conditions?
No, I know for the police service there is a systematic approach that you make the report to, because we know our police service is a top-down. But there is a report, you report it to your senior officer. If your senior officer is the perpetrator, you report it to the next available senior officer. And then, of course, there is our inspection unit that our unit who do that investigation. Of course, we have the Victim and Witness Support Unit. We provide support for them. We have our social work unit, staff with qualified social workers to assist them through the psychological situations. And I just want to say to my officers out there, you do not have you applied for one job, don't take two positions. It doesn't make sense. There's no guarantee on that position. There's no gratuity and pension on that position. There's only pain. So you do what you're supposed to do and leave the rest to the authorities.
Thank you so much for being with us.